recently, or having a second referendum in the House of Commons, is because the people backing the so-called People's Vote know they'd lose it.
Well, unlike Theresa May, they don't then go forward with it, which is an interesting thing.
Well, here we go. This is the Sovereign RP25A all finished, all buffed up and back to full working order. Now let's have a look at what I've done. So electrically it's all finished. I've used black shoe liquid shoe polish, the old cherry blossom, just to give the Rexine a bit of a spruce. The grill's come off. It had a bit of a dent in the side. I've tried to get that out. Don't try it too far, else you'll crack the chrome. So I've done the best I can there. The dial plate's been cleaned up with my new plastic polish, which I'm very impressed with. This comes from glasspolish.co.uk. I got it off Amazon. Seems to do a pretty good job. It didn't take the deeper gouges out, you know, where you might get one or two deeper scratches on a dial face. It didn't take those out so much, but it certainly reduced all the minor scratches from people's fingernails where you're turning the knobs around. So yeah, worked really well. So the knobs have been cleaned, the dial plate's been cleaned, all these knobs have been taken off, a little dab of glue on top of the white plastic spigot thing, and glued in place, so when you do that they don't ping across the room. All the aluminium surrounds for the knobs have all been polished up. They'll soon go dull again. Turning to the back, I did mention I was thinking about repadding it. Well, I started and took all the furniture and the white piping off, and even with the application of the Mrs.'s hairdryer and some solvent, the old Evo stick didn't want to budge. And obviously you can only push this Rexine so far before you stick something through the side of it and ruin it. So I thought discretion was the better part of valour, so I've just left it. So I stuck it all back together. On the grill, I've drilled out the old broken pegs, or just the little stubs, put 5 new bits of wire, just cut little bits off, and super glued those in place, just to give it a little bit of lateral support. And then I've just glued it in place because the old heat shrink where they apply the soldering iron to the end of these plastic pegs didn't work clearly. On the inside, let's move the camera down a little bit. On the back, I've obviously replaced all the furniture once I took it all off, replaced the piping, cleaned all that up, polished up these little clippy things here, and then I've used a Wilko's cheapo ironing board cover to get new foam pads, and I've cut those out using a compass cutter. If you've not seen one of those before, they're quite cheap and they are really useful, not just for radio stuff but for around the house. You can cut out these foam pads for hacker radios and also knob felts as well. And sorry, I just forgot to mention, all the knobs up top have all got new felts. Right, so I'll remove the batteries and we can have a look inside. So not much to write home about in here. I've recapped the amplifier, recapped the FM IF board and the AM IF board. I think you saw some of that before. New volume control because the other one was shot. Cleaned up the speaker, little fingerprints and glue marks on it. That's nothing to mention really. I have got a sheet of new battery labels, but unfortunately, despite having the early and the late ones, they're the wrong sort for this particular set, so I've left that one in for now, rust covered and all. I've put a new piano, I put a replacement piano hinge in because the other one had corroded so much at this end that you could actually bend the metal in your fingers. This radio has been dropped, and I think it must have fallen off a table and dropped on the cover, because what I didn't notice until I cleaned the back was there's a bit of wood under here that you can feel has splintered away, and it's actually cut the Rexine from the inside a little bit, just a little split there, but no one's going to notice that really. So getting back to the inside, I've taken off all the old black tape, electrician's tape that Hacker put on. So one bit up there, one bit there, another bit there on the amp connector, and another bit further up, and then a bit on the battery lead, which they always put just here, which is sometimes missing. I've got 2 new nylon nuts on the amp board, because one or other or both of those is usually missing. So I've just got some 4BA nylon nuts from Radio Spares, which I've had for a while. Useful to have, because the nylon nuts on these amp boards are usually worn out or missing. So it's got 2 new ones. What else have I done? Yeah, recap the amp, blah, 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 blah. That's it for that, and it's all back working now. I'm quite happy. If I bring you in a bit, one thing I did notice is the handle, and I'm trying to look through the viewfinder and point, the handle is actually quite badly corroded. I've never seen that before. Looks like something has spilt on it, maybe a chemical or something, but it is really quite pitted. I don't know if you can see. I can't file that back or anything. It's actually gone through the upper face of the handle here, this little bit here, so I can't do anything about that. And whatever's spilt on it, I can't show you without taking the handle off. If you're familiar with Japanese samurai swords, then you'll know that the metal is beaten and folded and then heated up and folded and beaten again, and it leaves like a special pattern in the metal, and whatever's spilt on this has left like swirl marks on the underneath of the handle. It looks quite pretty actually, but I can't really show you. I don't know why I mentioned that actually, but anyway. So there she is. The radio's flipping loud, I can tell you. Only a little, sort of like an 1/8 of a turn, and it's certainly enough to fill the room. So very happy with that, especially the price. I think it cost me 20 quid actually. So I've certainly had my fun out of it. Right, the next radio I'm going to work on is probably going to be the Selena. Now, I took this apart the other night, and it was working, as you saw when I first brought it home, but just looking at the circuit board, one of the electrolytics has spewed some nastiness out of one end, so I need to definitely replace that. But I still think this is just really like an MOT inside, and then cosmetically the finish is a little bit tarred on the wood, so we'll bring that one up and we should have a spiffing working. Did I take the batteries out of it? I must have done. Yeah, I took the batteries out of it, so we'll have another working Selena, which is never a bad thing. We've also got a couple of Melody Boys to look at. This one I think I showed before, and I need to get it working. It is disgustingly dirty. I don't think the amplifier board's working on here. In fact, nothing's working. It doesn't respond to anything. So that's a fault finding exercise. Or I can take a chassis out of a worker that I've got that is otherwise scrap, because it's so badly, all the chrome's all pitted and it's just not in a good shape. And put the chassis out of the spares one into this, and then fault find that chassis separately. So we'll get this one up and running. because underneath all the grunge, and it is absolutely filthy, underneath all the grunge it's not in bad condition. It's still got all the screen printed markings on here, which are sometimes usually missing, and the Melody Boy 1000 is in pretty good condition as well, but this one is missing the Grundig badge. So I might use my spares set and just get this one up and running, and then we can fault find the board. So that's it really. And we've got that valve radio to work on that's residing in the back of my car at the minute, because I've got no room in the house because we're having carpets fitted, etc. Right, back to the Sovereign. Thanks very much for sticking with me on this one. It's been quite a fault-finding exercise for me, and this series of videos didn't turn out as I planned or hoped they would. This one had a lot of faults that took quite some time to pin down. On reflection, I shouldn't have spent so much time trying to find why the local oscillator wasn't working at all. So at the start the headphone socket wasn't working, so we didn't have any sound at all. So we fixed that, we got sound, and then we found nothing else was working. And eventually it was a combination of the gramophone socket, being duff, and then the crack in the AMIF board, which as I mentioned, I've got another Sovereign with exactly the same faults, or exactly the same initial faults, and no sound. Sorry, it has got sound, it's just no AM. So I'm going to get that down from the loft and check that the PCB isn't cracked. But yeah, that was really hard to find that little crack. I've got magnifying glasses and loops, and I've got a stronger engineering loop, and I even took a digital photograph of that area of that board and zoomed in on my PC, and I still couldn't see it. It was just sort of that gut feel where the weakest point on the board might be, and yeah, I just eventually found it. But anyway, that's all gone now, and we've got a working radio. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me, and hopefully see you again soon, or on Graham's radio show on Sunday.